All right, welcome back to my channel. My name is Alex, and today I'm going to be walking you through how to start your own aircraft brokerage business. The information in this video is going to be based on my new book titled How to Become an Aircraft Broker. So that being said, let's get right into it. Also, you might see me cheat a little bit and look at the book as we go through this video. But step number one is to research licensing requirements. Now, to become an aircraft broker, you don't need an FAA license. You also don't need a license if you are looking to work for another brokerage. But if your goal is to start your own aircraft brokerage business, some states in the United States require you to get an aircraft dealer license. Now, this license is not something that you take a test and then they issue you a license. It's sort of like a business license. Examples are going to be Arizona and Washington. Both of those states require aircraft brokers or aircraft brokerages to get an aircraft dealer license. They also require you to place a surety bond with the department. So the surety bond, I don't remember, but it's one of them is $10,000 and the other one is $25,000. Now that doesn't mean you need to have $10,000 or $25,000 to put it as a surety bond. You can use companies like Jet Surety or Surety Bond Direct, and they will issue the surety bond and you only have to pay like $100 a year, something like that. I'll have the links in the description. Apart from that, other states have different requirements. For example, here in Florida, you don't need an aircraft dealer license, but you do need to register your brokerage with the Department of Revenue of Florida. So it's very important if you're looking at starting your own aircraft brokerage, very important that you research the requirements for your state. And if you're watching this from a different country, make sure you check the regulations in your country. So apart from researching these licensing requirements, you also need to start an LLC, a sole proprietor LLC, and apply for an EIN number. That is an employer identification number. Now, if you don't know how to do that, shoot, we have YouTube and you have Google, so you can Google how to do it. It's not that hard. And you can also hire a service like LegalZoom, or I think it's called Bisbee. There's another one that's called Bisbee. You can try them and you can file for your LLC like that. All right, step number two is gain knowledge. So at this point, you need to assess what your level of experience is in aviation. If you're gonna be helping buyers and sellers either sell or buy an airplane, you need to know aviation, and you have to have the ability to speak aviation. If not, you're just not going to be successful. So assess your level of experience. If you're starting from zero, I definitely recommend taking an online course such as my aircraft broker course. Even if you have experience in aviation, I still suggest that you take a course, and it doesn't have to be mine. There's a couple out there that you can research, check them out and see what works best for you. But get educated. You need to know how to speak aviation. You need to know how aviation works, and also how the entire sales process of an aircraft works. Now, the next step is you need to select a market. So when I say select a market, you need to determine whether you want to deal with piston airplanes, turboprops, or jets, and in some cases, helicopters. My recommendation is that you select a few makes and models from these categories. From my experience, everyone wants to go straight to the jets, and that's completely cool. Now, if that's something that you want to do, jets and turboprops, and you want to start your own aircraft brokerage business, you need to have significant cash reserves. And here's what I mean. In order to be successful in that market, you're going to need subscriptions like JetNet. That's going to run you for $750 a month. And you also have to sign a contract for 12 months. You also need to have a budget to advertise your clients' airplanes. Ads and controller, they can range anywhere from $600 to $2,000. Okay, so keep that in mind. Also, you have to hire a professional photographer if you're going to be in that market, and that can range, anywhere from if it's a good one, it's going to cost you like $1,500 to $2,000, but you can probably get away with a different photographer that charges, $500, something like that. Now, the piston market, in my opinion, is going to be easier to get into because you don't need that many subscriptions. You still need subscriptions. And how I did it, I started in the piston market, and after I started my LLC, what I did is I bought the subscriptions when I needed them. I didn't just go and bought all the subscriptions right away. Now, you're probably wondering what subscriptions you need. I actually have a video for that, so I'll put the link up in the card. I don't know if it's this side or this side, but anyways, one of the sides. Also, I'm not trying to press on it, but also the course would be a good resource to see exactly what it is that you need. Now, you might be asking, so what type of knowledge do I need to gain? Definitely basic stuff. Start by learning the phonetic alphabet. That's a big one. Once you select a few makes and models that you want to focus on, you want to become an expert in those makes and models. So learn what the range is, what the fuel capacity is, what the baggage capacity is, how many passengers does it carry. In the turboprop and jet world, how much does a type rating cost? So a pilot can fly that airplane. You also want to know about the different inspections, face inspections, zonal inspections. You want to become very knowledgeable about the maintenance aspect of these airplanes and also the operating costs. Same is going to go for piston airplanes. So it doesn't matter which one you do, just pick a few makes and models and become knowledgeable. Now, when you pick the makes and models, you want to make sure that you pick in-demand airplanes. So if we're in the piston market, you don't want to pick a Beechcraft Musketeer. For example, in the piston market, you're going to be looking at Cessna 172s, SR-20, SR-22, also Piper Warriors. Let's see, Beechcraft A36, Beechcraft Barons. That's the type of aircraft you want to focus on. And what I suggest is there's market reports out there. You can read upon what's on demand, and that way you can come up with the makes and models you want to focus on. In the turboprop market, TBMs, Pilatus PC-12. In the jet world, you don't want to go with Sableliners. You want to go with like a Phenom 100, 300, Challenger 300, 350. Those are in-demand airplanes. Okay, so at this point, you got educated, you selected a few makes and models you're going to specialize in, and the next step is to understand what your duties and responsibilities are going to be as a broker when representing buyers and sellers. So let me walk you through it, and this is going to be pretty quick. The book's going to go more in depth on this, and also the course and other resources that I have. For the sellers, what I do is I haven't signed the exclusive aircraft listing agreement. That's where my commission is going to go, and a bunch of different terms and conditions. And then I collect information about the airplane. I'm going to collect, what the total time is, how much time do the engines have, how much time the propeller has, does it have any damage history, when was the overhaul completed, by who. I'm going to collect as much information about the airplane as I can. Sometimes it's challenging to get the sellers to share all this information, but as a broker, you need to get that information because you want to represent the airplane properly. Now, I'm also going to hire a photographer to take good pictures of the airplane. In my opinion, that is very important. I'm also going to create the listings. I'm going to post it in sites like Controller, Trade a Plane, Barnstormers. Just blow it out there everywhere that you can. Okay, so you can advertise this airplane and get potential buyers. Now, once the airplane is out in the internet, you're going to start receiving phone calls. So as a broker, you got to make sure that you follow up, you keep track of these potential buyers, and just keep on top of them. Now, usually a buyer is the first thing that they're going to ask for is the copy of the logbooks. So it's very important that you collect those as soon as you can in the process from the seller, copies of the logbooks. For jets and turboprops, usually they'll ask for the status sheet. So, the status sheet doesn't go as in depth as the logbooks, but it gives you an idea of where the airplane stands. So now you're going to send that information to the buyer, and they're going to do their due diligence. And again, I'm going like there's so much more detail into it, but I'm just trying to, I don't want to make this video like an hour long. But they're going to do their due diligence. They're going to make sure that this airplane is a good fit for them, and then they're going to submit an offer. In the piston market, I feel like it's always like a verbal offer. In the jets and turboprops, the offer is going to be in a form of an LOI or letter of intent. So you, as a seller's broker, you're going to review that document, make sure the terms and conditions benefit your client, the seller, and most likely you're going to have to do some negotiations. Okay, so after the LOI, the buyer will be allowed to do what's called a preliminary visual inspection. Some people call it a survey. I call it a preliminary visual inspection. That's when the buyer comes, check out the airplane, make sure everything looks good, and if everything looks good, jump into the aircraft purchase agreement. So the difference between the LOI and the purchase agreement is the LOI is not binding. The aircraft purchase agreement is a legally binding document. And this is why it's a good idea to have a good lawyer that you can call, maybe even put him in retainer. So at that point, also your responsibility, if the buyer has a broker, either their broker or yourself, you will open escrow. For that, I use companies like AIC Title or Aerospace Reports. I've worked with both of them, great people, and you'll get to know the different agents, and then you can choose which one you like best. But part of your responsibility is to set up escrow. With the escrow, you're going to send them your listing agreement, what your commission is, and then they will be in charge of collecting the deposits, collecting the funds, and they're going to be in charge to submit all the documents to the FA and release the funds once the deal closes. Now, as a buyer's broker, I start the process by doing an initial consultation. So during this consultation, we're going to determine what the client's mission is, and we're going to determine what airplanes fulfill that mission. In some cases, the buyer's going to come to you. They already know exactly the airplane that they want. If that's the case, you will have to discuss things like what avionics package they're looking for, what type of modifications or mods the airplane needs to have, etc., etc., etc. So just so you have a clear understanding of what it is that you're looking for. I will also formalize that in a aircraft acquisitions agreement. That's going to show the terms and conditions and what my commission is going to be. Now, as part of your responsibility is to go out there and find that exact airplane. For the most part, you might be able to find it in the market. So in trade plane controller, Barnstormers, etc. There's going to be situations if the buyer wants a very specific type of airplane with very specific type of avionics, etc., 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 you might have to look at off-market options. And anytime you have a conversation with a seller or anyone, and you hear, oh, there's someone that is thinking about selling an airplane, but it's not in the market, make sure that you write all that down because it will be helpful. Now, in the turboprop and jet world, definitely you have to do market research. That takes time, but you need to know if you're going to choose, like example, Phenom 100 or 300, you want to know how many of them are in the world by serial number. You also want to know how many active listings there is. So that way you can properly help a buyer acquire this airplane. And the duties and responsibilities in the process is pretty similar when you're helping buyers and sellers. So I'm not going to go into the whole LOI, APA process because it's the same. As a buyer's broker, you're going to be responsible to make sure that the terms and conditions of all those documents are beneficial to the buyer. Also, as a buyer's broker, what I do, and this also comes from my experience as an AMP, but when we're looking at an airplane, I request the logbooks or the status sheet. I request a title search, an AOPA title search package provided by Aerospace Reports that gives me a title search to make sure there's no liens or anything like that in the airplane. I also get copies of the Form 337s. Form 337 is submitted anytime a major alteration or modification is done to the aircraft. So I request those, and I research the aircraft thoroughly before we even put an offer. So that is a responsibility. I don't necessarily, I wouldn't say it's an expectation, because at the end of the day, this is an unregulated market. So as a broker, you can choose what you do and what you don't do, because at the end of the day, you could also hire a mechanic to do that research. So it's very important to also have connections within the aviation industry. Also, more duties and responsibilities. You're going to be in charge of finding a shop that can do the pre-buy inspection. And also, once the deal closes, you're going to have to help the buyer find a pilot so they can fly it to the buyer's location. Step number 4, now you understand your duties and responsibilities. You got to go out there and find clients. So I'm going to share some techniques to do this. Early on, when I started as an aircraft broker, something that worked for me, and unfortunately is not working as well anymore, but it is, try it out, is Facebook Marketplace. So what I noticed is that some sellers would post their airplanes in Facebook Marketplace, but they wouldn't post it in Trade Plane or Controller, and they would use horrible pictures and horrible descriptions. So that's a problem. That airplane is not being marketed properly. So I would come in and offer a solution and say, hey, I'm an aircraft broker. I'll take professional pictures. We'll freshen up the description of the aircraft so that way we can sell it. So that's one technique. I'm not gonna get super in depth into this one. Definitely it's something that's in the book and also in the course. Information about aircraft owners in the United States, it's public. So you can access, not the phone number, but you can access the address of every aircraft owner in the US. And you can use skip tracing techniques to find the phone number. So when you select a few makes and models and you want to specialize in those, you can go to the FAA's database and see all the owners for those airplanes, and then use skip tracing techniques to get the phone number, and you can create a cold calling list. Another thing you can also do is with those addresses, you can do mail marketing. So create like a postcard and say something like, are you interested in selling your Cessna 172? And give them a brief description of what the current market conditions are, and obviously include your information in there as well. So that's another way to get clients. Step number 5, let's say you have a potential seller interested in working with you. Well, step number 5 is going to be to negotiate your commission. Now, the commission ranges from 1% to 10%. Now, there's no right or wrong. Again, this is an unregulated market. It's not like real estate where the normal commission is 3%, right? But how I do it is, if I have an airplane that's worth $50,000, anywhere from $50,000 to $100,000, I'm gonna try, well, not 100, but anything like in the 50,000 range, I'm gonna ask for 10%. And then from there, I'm just going to start reducing the commission. Like if we're looking at a Piper Navajo that's worth $500,000, I'm gonna be looking at 6%. Okay, even at $1 million airplane, you can be at 6%, and then from there you can start reducing your commission. Obviously, if you're going to be representing a Gulfstream G550 that's worth $40 million, you ain't going to get 6%. You're going to be looking at 1% or 0.5%. Then the next step is to get a signed agreement. So I kind of touched on that before. So if you're representing a buyer, you're going to get an aircraft acquisitions agreement. That's what you need to have the buyer sign, and that's where your commission is going to go. If it's a seller, it's going to be an exclusive aircraft listing agreement. Now, sometimes you might want to go with a non-exclusive. So the difference is the exclusive agreement gives you exclusive right to sell the airplane. The non-exclusive, they might be using you and other brokers to sell the airplane. Obviously, you always want to go with exclusive. That's what you want to negotiate. Now, how can you obtain templates of these agreements? Well, the only way right now, I'm sure if you Google it, you maybe find some templates, but definitely, if you're very serious about this, definitely join a course, mine or whichever one you decide to go with. Usually those are going to include templates of these agreements, which you're going to need. Mine, for instance, it includes the acquisitions agreement, the listing agreement, the LOI, the aircraft purchase agreement, aircraft description form. I mean, a bunch of different ones. Commission agreement, there's a bunch of them. Not going to get really into that. Once you have that agreement signed, step number 7 is going to be to close your first deal and get paid. So I kind of run you through the flow. Let me go over it one more time. I think repetition sometimes is good. So because this is a lot of information. I feel like I'm just blah, 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 like just throwing a bunch of information at you. But eventually things are gonna start making sense, right? So you get, let's start with the seller. So you get the exclusive listing agreement signed. The next thing that I have them do is fill out an aircraft description form, and this is where they're gonna put all the information about the airplane. Then I'm going to collect the copies of the logbooks or status sheet. I'm gonna have a photographer take pictures of the airplane. I'm gonna create the listing, okay? Also, I'm gonna create a specification sheet and some marketing material. Then I'm gonna start getting phone calls. I don't know if I said it, but also you're gonna post it in Trade a Plane Controller, etc. You're gonna start getting phone calls. You're going to set up escrow. You're going to receive an LOI from a buyer with an offer. Now you're gonna have the aircraft purchase agreement drafted, and both parties are gonna need to sign that. Once the aircraft purchase agreement is signed, then the next step is the pre-buy inspection. Okay, so pre-buy, essentially they're gonna go over the airplane, the logbooks, just make sure that the airplane looks good. If everything looks good, which it never does, the buyer's always gonna come back and try to negotiate with you. There's gonna be another round of negotiations, and once you come into terms, you're gonna close the deal. And the deal goes through escrow. There's a way to do it without using escrow, but I do not recommend it. You should always use escrow, because then they are responsible. They're a third party that collects the funds and submits all the documents to the FA. So that's the best way to do it. There's a fee to use it, but usually split between buyer and seller. So once you're ready to close, you're gonna send your listing agreement to escrow. You're gonna send them your wire instructions for your business bank account, and you're gonna tell them what your commission is. And once the deal closes, you will get paid. And now from the buyer standpoint I already kind of cover it, but the process is exactly the same. To the point, the initial stuff, like you have to do the initial consultation, find the airplane, collect all the information about the airplane to determine whether it's a good fit or not for your client. And then once you get to the LOI, as a buyer's broker, you will submit the LOI, and then the process is exactly the same. So LOI, preliminary visual inspection, aircraft purchase agreement, pre-buy, further negotiation, and then closing. And then there's also post-closing tasks that you might have to do. For example, if the airplane has a 406 megahertz, I'm getting so technical here, megahertz ELT, gotta tell the buyer to make sure that, the seller to deregister it from NOAA, and that the buyer needs to register it with NOAA, etc. I'm not really gonna get into it, but it's a lot of stuff. But and yeah, that's how you start your brokerage, and that's how you close your first deal. I know that was a lot of information. I definitely want to hear back from you guys in the comment section. Maybe some feedback, some suggestions on things that you want me to expand on. I would greatly appreciate that. But apart from that, thanks for sticking with me, and I will see you in the next video.